ch14, chapter 14, problem example number 24. This is frequency response of the basic circuits. It's asking at what frequency will the reactance of a 1 microfarad capacitor equal the resistance of a 2 kiloohm resistor. So you have to set the two the two impedances equal to each other. So you, x of c equals 1 divided by 2 pi fc. Okay, and you want to find the frequency, which is why we use the 2 pi fc instead of omega, the 2 pi f. So you set that equal to r, and then you solve for f. So you get f equals 1 divided by 2 pi rc. And then you substitute in the values for r and c. So you get 1 divided by 2 pi times 2 times 10 to the third ohms, which is 2 kiloohms. And then c is 1 times 10 to the negative 6 farads. So then you get 1 divided by 12.56 times 10 to the negative third, which ends up equaling 79.62 hertz. All right, frequency is always going to be in hertz. Section 14.4 is the average power and power factor. Problem number 29. If the current through and the voltage across an element are I equals 8 sine omega t plus 40 and V equals 48 sine omega t plus 40, respectively, compute the power by IR squared, Vm times Im divided by 2 cosine theta, and Vi cosine theta, and compare answers. So let's take the first one. So R in a purely resistive circuit, which is automatically, you can see that it is, because the plus 40 here for the I, theta I, and the plus 40 degrees for theta V are the same. So R equals V sub m divided by I sub m equals the maximum values. That's for 48 divided by the 8 equals 6 ohms. And then P equals I squared over R. I is the RMS value, okay, in this equation. So it's going to be this I max value divided by the square root of 2. That's the RMS value. And then you're squaring that, multiplied by the resistance of 6, which you calculated here. You get 192 watts. Second method is this method here. So power equals Vm times Im divided by 2 times cosine theta. Vm is the 48, Im is the 8. Those are the max values, divided by 2. Take cosine of theta, theta being theta I minus theta V absolute value, which ends up being 40 minus 40 equals 0. Absolute value is 0, 0. So the cosine of 0 is 1. When you multiply this out, you get 192 watts again. And the last method, VI cosine theta, again, this, when they're not putting a subscript on this V and this I, and they're capital, which is inferred to mean RMS. So you have to take the maximum value, 48, divided by the square root of 2 to get VRMS, and IRMS you have to take the 8 divided by it by the square root of 2. And when you multiply them together, notice it looks exactly the same as this formula. The square root of 2 times square root of 2 ends up being 2, so it's the same formula. So you get 192 watts again, so they're all the same. Conversion between forms, problem number 37. It says convert the following from rectangular to polar form. We're only going to do part B here. So B is 2 plus J2. So X is 2 and Y is 2. And to convert it, to get the Z, what you do is take the square root of 2 squared plus 2 squared, which ends up equaling 4 plus 4, and then take the square root of 8, which is 2.83, and then theta. So I pasted the formulas here. Theta is the inverse tangent of y divided by x, so it'd be 2 divided by 2, which is equal to 1. The inverse tangent of 1 is 45 degrees. Again, make sure your calculator is set up for degrees, because if you get radians, it's going to, what is that in radians? It's pi divided by 4 or something. But we want the answer in degrees. And then problem 40, convert the following from polar to rectangular form. So I did all of them here. Here are the answers. What you do is, this is your value of z, this 42, and then this is your value of theta in degrees, 0.15. So to calculate, you have z of 42 and theta of 0.15. You have to take z times the cosine of the 0.15 degrees, which ends up, your x also equals 42, and then your y equals 0.11. That's a really small number. And then likewise, if you had 2002 with an angle of negative 60, you're going to take your 2002 times cosine of negative 60, which is going to be about 1,000, or 1 times 10 to the third. And then y is 2002 times sine of negative 60 degrees, which is going to be negative 1,730, negative 1.73 times 10 to the third, and so on. This is how you do these problems here.